The craziest moment, we had to take one giant machine, physical, with 64 gigabytes of RAM, put all IntelliJ into the RAM, and cut it using this wheel of tool from the Google. And after that, we made our own wheel, as we do, which is fast and convenient for us. Yes, that was hard story.
Even though it's weird. Hi, Dima, once more.
Hi, Mark, again.
How
are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's interesting that the Wi-Fi connection probably just dropped when we started our interview, but now let's see if that works any better. What I wanted to know is for the folks listening, basically, what is your role in the IntelliJ team? So what do you do on a daily basis?
I've got two roles in IntelliJ. The first one, I'm responsible for the infrastructure stuff. That includes pretty much everything. Continuous integration stuff, which means TeamCity, means test dependencies for IntelliJ tests, for the installers builds. It also includes everyday requests from the people and helping here and there, and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing the release automation stuff. So I'm responsible for the releases for IntelliJ based products. So actually, infrastructure for the release automation, it's all boils down to the TeamCity, actually.
Okay.
City configuration.
And we're gonna get into that for in a second, but I actually wanted to have a quick top level overview, basically, of IntelliJ. A couple of questions. I'm a big IntelliJ fan. I've been using IntelliJ for over a decade. And I remember that back in the day, there was only, I think, IntelliJ IDEA, and then there was a split at some point into IntelliJ IDEA, the Ultimate Edition and the Community Edition. And now today you have IntelliJ IDEA, you have all these other IDEs, you have PyCharm and RubyMine and whatnot. What does that look like? I mean, do we have like one central source repository for everything for that whole platform? Or are there multiple source repositories, or how do I have to imagine that whole thing?
Nowadays, it's the single IntelliJ repository. Almost every product based on IntelliJ platform lives there, except for example, Rider. It's the separate story about them. They live a separate world, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's .NET world. It wasn't the case just maybe a year and a half ago. It was many repositories which was used together, and it was my team's job to make it the single monorepo, actually. So it was pretty funny story. It was very hard story, as you may imagine. It's now it's 12 gigabytes of the single repository.
All right.
So it's pretty hard for the space to handle it sometimes.
Okay. And how did you, can you tell more about that? How did you do the migration, or how did the whole thing work? Just over one weekend, just combine everything, or what happened?
And to combine all repos into the one, it was pretty simple. We made a merge, and we provided an instruction for the developers how to change their workspace to work in the new repository, which it was pretty simple, but there is a problem with downloading the whole repo. So we were doing some crazy things like publishing it to Google Drive and sending the links, and it was the last resort. We didn't know what to do, what else to do.
Okay.
We had to do this. It was very slow, and it was one of the funniest things we do. There is a lot of changes in TeamCity because no one assumed single repository, of course.
Okay, yeah.
And this was one of the most one of the hardest thing for me personally was to establish sync between the monorepo and community on GitHub, for example. It was for the first I thought it is impossible or it's some crazy thing.
Just a bit of background on that. So you have now one big monorepo, but the community edition of IntelliJ that lives separately on GitHub, basically, is being synced. Or how does it work?
Before the monorepo, it was as you say, it was one repo for the ultimate to simplify things, and one repo from the GitHub. But after monorepo, it was just a directory in the monorepo, just community / and all the files there.
Okay.
So we had to find a way to cut store Git history from monorepo, from the community directory, and push it to the GitHub. It's you can do it by the Git means, standards means, but it was too slow. We had to invent some little wheel. We used the wheel from the Google. It was also very slow. It worked. We had to the craziest moment. We had to take one giant machine, physical, with the 64 gigabytes of RAM, put all IntelliJ into the RAM, and cut it using this wheel tool from the Google. And after that, we made our own wheel, as we do, which is fast and convenient for us. Yes, that was hard story.
Okay, that is a good story. Just as a bit of background, roughly how many teams would you say, or how many developers would you say are now accessing that one monorepo that we now have?
300 and plus, as far as I remember, maybe more.
Something like that. Okay.
There's a lot of people, a lot of teams working in the single monorepo.
Right.
All app code, all the CLI, all the rest.
And how is the development? Is that trunk based? I mean, do you have like feature branches? How does the whole development thingy work? So you have these 300 people committing. Do they just commit something to trunk and it gets built, or what happens?
Yes, it's trunk based development, and everyone just the idea is that everyone is just pushing to the master branch, to the trunk, and someone there is some feature branches, but the mainstream way is to just push a trunk. And we had a lot of headache with it, because if everyone pushes to the trunk, then it gets broken all time. Compilation is red. Tests is red. Are red, of course. Yeah. They always red. So it's actually also part of the infrastructure stuff infrastructure team to find a way to enforce green compilation and allow developers to stay productive. I mean, for them, committing directly to the trunk is to be productive. To don't spend time on the merges and all this stuff.
Right. I was actually I'd love to get into all these questions now with the build and how long a build takes and all that kind of stuff. But just a question before that. Now, IntelliJ is about, I don't know, 20 years old, I think, kind of. So let's say it's a pretty big code base basically. If I have like a new feature, any new feature, how long would that actually take from feature idea to having the feature in some sort of a build? I mean, do features usually get developed in weeks, in months? Does it take a really long time? Is it really tricky to get new features into IntelliJ? Just like yeah.
I haven't done any features in the IntelliJ myself, unfortunately. I'm just doing the build scripts at best. But I can tell that just recently that data grips stuff made the new feature just a couple of days after some tweet in Twitter. They liked it. We made a feature from this tweet. Time to market is, I'm not sure, 1 day.
Oh, okay.
It's a nice example. As far as I can see, there is no much. There is not that hard to introduce a new feature. I mean, developer may introduce new feature and they do it regularly. It's the problem to make the features discoverable, not to add new features. Yeah, that's the problem.
Right.
It's a lot of hidden gems. You find some.
Yes, because I also know that, I mean, I think I saw some study a while ago that a lot of people basically only know like 10% or 20% of the features of IntelliJ, and they don't know the majority of all the other features.
That's why so many tips and tricks presentations at conferences.
Yes,
I hope they do. They may make a difference.
I think they do. And do you? I mean, even though you haven't developing features yourself, but do you know how features get decided upon? I mean, can developers just say, "Hey, I want to build a new feature," or do you look at U-Track, see what's most voted, and how does the whole how does that process work?
Not sure 100%. Now IntelliJ have for some time IntelliJ have a product manager. So I suppose now features have to be somehow discussed or something like this. Just but some time ago it was just that every team decided by themselves which feature they just want to implement. It is pretty free.
So you didn't have like a top-down approach where you had like let's say, manager. I mean, I know we don't even have these sort of classic hierarchies, whatever, but you didn't have someone till to next week you need to implement these 5 features, but it was more democratic from the team.
Yeah, that's the word. It's democratic. That's a source of excitement because developers like features. They don't like fixing bugs and etc. But that's also the source of some problems because there is bugs which affects the users, and we need to balance. And there were a lot of discussions about how to make this smooth, and that's not so easy.
Yeah, that's not so easy. I can imagine, unfortunately. Yeah. My favorite question. Once we go into the details, how long does a build take? And maybe before how long does a build take, what is actually a build? So just to take it away, does a build mean I go from monorepo to that executable file on the JetBrains website, or is it something else?
Have I get you right that what's the release cycle? What was your question? Or not?
So I was let me explain. So when I I think back in also probably over 10 years ago, whatever, you started with having nightly builds. So I could, with IntelliJ, you built it and I could download a nightly version of IntelliJ and just install it. And even back in the day, I was in a company and we always installed the new nightly build every day we went into the company. I don't know why we did it, but we actually did that, even though stuff was broken. And I was wondering, so at one point I have that's what I meant by executable on the website, so I can download IntelliJ. And is the build process, the build pipeline, basically producing, like you have that mono repository, and then you have that build chain, and at the end you have all these executables for all the IDEs that people can download? Or is there like some manual process in between, or what does a build pipeline look like, basically?
We have a manual release deployments, uploads. So new release. So you imagine you commit to the monorepo, then couple of times in a day installers executable files are built for all the operational systems. So it happens pretty automatically. And if you're IntelliJ developer and many of them are using nightly builds, then over the next morning you've got your changes downloaded and installed. You've got your executable file updated. If you are a developer, if you are an external user, then you have to wait for early access program builds. And they are published manually. Yes, the button to deploy, to make it public, it's a manual button. You had to click it.
Okay, I see. And so that means, but you just said it happens several times a day. Does it happen? Does every build for a developer, so every check-in basically lead into an executable file at the end, or does it just happen a couple of times a day, or do the?
Yeah, just a couple of times because to produce an executable files, it takes a lot of time and machine time.
Okay.
Especially for macOS.
Okay.
Due to Apple metrization, it may take. It's the main source of the time, of the most time-consuming part.
Okay. And how long does I don't even know. How long does a build take for IntelliJ? Are we talking minutes, hours?
It takes around 1.5 hour to build IntelliJ IDEA community and ultimate installers for Windows, Linux, and macOS. Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty long. Yes.
Actually, to me, it also almost sounds pretty quick, because I've seen build systems where they run for hours and hours and don't seem to produce as much. But yeah.
There is a lot of room for improvement, but we're just not there yet. not fixing things that just works. It took around 2 to 3 hours just months ago. Then we just made something in parallel and got easy speed up and just left it.
Right.
It was fine.
Right.
Like hour and a half. It's nice.
Would you say, just again, roughly, how many tests are there? Would you say the testing takes the longest time, or what is takes the longest time in that whole build pipeline?
This 1.5 hour is just building the executable files.
Okay.
Just them. The whole testing is around half an hour, a little bit more. There are around 100 builds in the build chain, executing Something like oh no, never mind. It's just 100,000 tests, or maybe more. I'm not sure.
So you're roughly
There's a lot of tests which are highly parallelized, which like split in 100 machines on TeamCity.
Okay.
So it's very, very long.
Okay, so okay. So I mean, obviously using TeamCity, you have roughly 100 build agents working on the build pipeline simultaneously, basically, kind of.
Yes, just tests.
Just for tests.
Yes.
Okay, and then also a couple more for all the for building the distributions and whatnot, and I see. How many build agents would you say roughly are occupied with the whole IntelliJ building universe every day? How many build agents do we have actually?
It's around 400 agents.
Around 400 agents.
Yeah, most of them are in AWS. There's around 100 agents in vSphere virtual agents in on premises. Yeah.
On premise. Okay, what was it? Were we always like AWS heavy, or did we also migrate lately into AWS, and before that had everything on premise, or did that change recently?
It was 2 years ago, so you may call it recent migration. Yeah, that was actually before me, before I got to JetBrains. But yeah, it was like only on premise. It was very slow. There was time. I was told that there was time when we used only on-premise agents, and tests wasn't split into the 100 builds, and it took like 8 hours to complete, something like that. And people were not very happy. They need us.
And by the way, when you say tests, I mean, we have a desktop software. So what kind of tests are we actually talking about? I mean, what is being tested? Are you really? Do you have like automatic scripts clicking through IntelliJ also, that kind of stuff, like UI testing, or how do I have to imagine that?
There is not. There is some UI tests, but not in that build chain. In that build chain, mostly headless tests. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of integration tests. So yeah, they basically spin up the headless IntelliJ IDE and do something with it, like clicking, etc. There is performance tests which do that stuff, and as far as I know, there is not so much of the unit tests in IntelliJ code mm-hmm. base. There is a specifically designed test framework for the IntelliJ, mm-hmm. which just get you the spinned up IntelliJ instance for your tests. So there is possibly a lot of overhead in it, in such approach, but mm-hmm. It's like more reliable approach from the IntelliJ developer's perspective.
I see.
So there is a lot of heavy tests in this pipeline.
I didn't even know that IntelliJ had a headless mode, and you could like control it like that.
Yes, it is. It's since recently it's baked into the Docker image for the static analysis, so it's useful thing.
Right, I see. Because I was always wondering also how that, I mean, it's probably an advanced topic, but having different languages and also in the UI, maybe different shortcuts across different operating systems, how you test that everything is working on every system and everything is working correctly just from a UI perspective even. I
may add that there is, it's far from the perfect test suite, at least because it's all happened on the Linuxes. I mean, it's just there is no Windows and Mac OS in this pipeline. So it's some basic functional tests. They are integration tests, but they are not covering everything, to say the least.
I see. Is there also like a manual QA verification phase where you have like manual QA testers going through it?
Yes, I suppose. They should be. They definitely do it. I believe. But we will, as far as I understand, we heavily rely on the dogfooding. So that's why a lot of the IntelliJ developers using nightly builds, and including myself. And there is a lot of bugs reported by developers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So this approach had bad sides, had a good sides also.
Right. Yeah. Well, what would you say is one like thing that you would like to see improved in terms of building IntelliJ? Is there something that is a big pain at the moment and you'd like to have that resolved? I mean, as I can see, some stuff is getting better and better with the repos and whatnot and blah, but is there something that you would like to, that's up next, you would like to see fixed, kind of?
Do you mean the next thing which I would like to fix next?
Yes, yeah.
From my point, there is pretty much a lot of them. The longer you work on it, these things do not at least doesn't get shorter. It's just get longer. So yeah. One thing. I would like to find a way to find a non-intrusive way to provide the infrastructure for the green tests, because there is a lot of flaky tests today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really it defeats the purpose of the tests.
Mm-hmm.
Just a huge pain. And I would like to improve performance testing, to work on the infrastructure for this.
When you say flaky tests, what is what would you say are the main reasons for the tests to be flaky? Or is there something where you can say, I mean, yeah, it's because integrations are down or something, or but is there, I mean, what would you say kind of is the main issue there?
Maybe it's just a guess, but I suppose it's the IntelliJ platform architecture. I mean, there is from time to time I see that I've got execution timeouts for the many builds, and I'm told that it's yet another sporadic deadlock, something like this. Mm-hmm. I was told also that there is a lot of things happening in the UI thread, so-called event dispatching loop. Mm-hmm. And that's the thread which painting your user interface. So, and there is that's an anti-pattern to do something in that thread. Mm-hmm. But due to some reasons, historical reasons, IntelliJ platform do this stuff, and it causes many problems. Mm-hmm. And it's considering 20+ years history and considering all the plugins, it's very hard to fix. And that's the source of many. Maybe I'm not 100% correct, mm-hmm. but that's all I heard about.
By the way, just because you said it, did you ever count how many commits were made to IntelliJ over the past 20 years? I mean, do you know that if there's like millions of commits or?
Actually, I counted for one presentation a year or also, but I forgot. I don't remember it. But there is a lot of them, definitely. I actually don't remember any of the numbers. I counted lines of code. There is, of course, there is there are millions of them.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't remember the number.
Right. And but by the way, what I also forgot to ask at the beginning, it's not just, do you accept public, with the public GitHub repository, do you accept pull requests for people working on IntelliJ, like changes coming in from outside, basically, or does that ever happen?
Yes, of course, that's possible. That happens. But yeah, there is some point that there is not so many of them, of these pull requests, actually.
Mm-hmm.
There is some reasons behind it, but we definitely accept them.
Mm-hmm. But I guess it's also not so easy to get into the whole code base and then just work with it. I mean, it's not the easiest task, probably, if you're an outsider.
Yes, there is some. Actually, there was some recent discussions about that, and there is some plans to improve this, improve the process for the developers to just to accept the pull request or to make a change. Mm-hmm. There is some work to do in this direction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It really is. I find the whole topic to be super fascinating. Because to hear how you guys work on it and how it's being built is it's cool to hear it, basically, really.
As I suppose with many things, such things, from looking from the inside, I am mostly not so super excited. I find myself working at night and thinking I want to fix everything. No, I cannot do it. I will never fix everything. I cannot even fix what I am working on now. Not to say everything.
It will never stop.
Yeah. But you should say it with a smile. It will never stop. I need to find a way.
No, but I think for now that it already answered a ton of my questions, basically. And I really appreciate your time and going through all of that stuff with me. And I hope that at some point, maybe for a couple of days at least, you can fix things up and the problems stop coming in.
Yeah, thank you. That would be nice. No, it's actually it will never end, but thank you.